Now, a hoop house is sort of like a miniature greenhouse, and if you design it the right way, you can actually raise it, lower it, so that when you don't need it, when it's warm enough, your plants can get plenty of ventilation, but when it's cold, you can lower it down all the way, and you'll keep your plants happy and healthy for a little bit longer, and at the very least, you'll be able to start next season's garden a little bit earlier here in a couple of months. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build a base for the hoop house to sit on. And to do that, I'm just going to bolt some 2x4s on top of the raised bed that I made a few years ago. And these long sides here, they were already 8 foot to begin with, so I'm not even going to have to cut these first 2x4s. Now, we are going to have to make a couple of cuts here for the short sides, and it looks like each one of those is going to need to be 44 inches. I'm going to go ahead and double check that other side before I make the cut for it, just in case anything's a little bit wonky. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those 2 lengths for those short sides. And what I did is I did 44 inches from one side, 44 inches from the other, so I can just do one cut, scoot it down, and then do the next. Now I'm just going to bolt these short pieces in the same way that I did the long ones. Now, even though I have those bolted in all the way across, there's still a little bit of flex to them, so I'm going to toenail some screws in to each end just to make it a little bit more rigid and give this frame a little more structural integrity. So now that we got the base done, now we're going to do the actual frame of the hoop house itself. This will be the part that the PVC will connect to and that all of our plastic sheeting will be attached to once it's all said and done. Now, whereas we had just normal 96-inch pieces of lumber here, we're going to go the other way with these other boards. So our short end is now going to go all the way from the front to the back on both sides, and then long ways is going to be sandwiched in between those 2 pieces of lumber. So first thing I'm going to do is measure the short pieces and then cut those. So for me, that came to 51 inches, so I'm going to make that cut. Next up, I'm just going to measure in between those 2 boards I just laid out. They're not attached to anything, but now I have, looks like 89.5 inches for that. So right now I have all the pieces of the frame laid out on the base, and I'm just going to toenail them together. Next, I'm going to add the hinges. I'm going to put one down here, one on the other end. I'm going to try to put one in the middle too. Now that I got the frame assembled and attached to the base, I'm going to pre-drill some holes in my end caps and then also my T's. These end caps are going to be where I slide the PVC pipe into to form the actual hoop of the hoop house. And then these T's are going to help me have some additional supports along the edge. Next up, I'm going to attach my PVC end caps to the frame, and I'm going to be using some slightly shorter screws, the same ones that I used to attach the hinge, because I want them secured, but I do not want this screw to go all the way through into the base below, because I want the frame to be able to move around. Next up, we're going to add our PVC pipe, and before we do this, I'm going to cut a couple of feet off of each one of my pipes. I'm going to be using a 10-foot wide sheet of plastic to cover this, and if I make this 8 foot, that'll just give me a little bit of wiggle room on the sides when I go to add that plastic. Next, I'm going to attach the PVC pipe to the end caps that I secured to the frame, and as I do this, I am also going to go ahead and put the T's on so that those will be ready to go for our next step. So you might have noticed a couple of things as I was putting all this together. First off, I am going to have to trim my pepper plants a little bit. I was expecting that, but also these tomato cages, they are in the way, but that's fine because once I get the hoop house finished and there's plastic around it, wind isn't going to be an issue for these plants anyway, so they really won't need them. So you can see here, I've already started securing the first purlin into place. I drove a screw through that little PVC T into the pipe underneath it, and then also I drove another screw up from the bottom of this to connect the T to that purlin going across the top. Right here, I have it just kind of loosely secured with some zip ties. I'm going to trim those off with a flush cutter here in a little bit. But what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use my PVC cutting tool and then cut about right there. And then I'm going to drive a screw up into this one the same way that I did on the other side. Now after I got done securing this top purlin in place, I went ahead and I did the others also. As you can see, I put some electrical tape here to cover up those screws. I should have put them on the inside all the way around, but I just put that electrical tape there to prevent the screw head from messing with the plastic later on. But also, where I had the zip ties holding these in place, I went ahead and reinforced that with electrical tape also just to keep them from moving around. I do like the zip ties though when you're putting it all together because it holds them in place, but they're still kind of adjustable, so you can play where you want everything to end up, then just cinch them down with electrical tape when you're done to keep them from moving around. Then I also went ahead and trimmed my banana peppers and also staked them so that they will be, you know, leaning a little bit away from the plastic. I don't want them right up against that, but next thing that we're going to do is we're going to lay out our plastic and we're going to start draping it over the PVC frame. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, and I'm going to give myself quite a bit of extra on the sides, mainly because it's going to be a whole lot easier to trim off here in a second when we're done than it will be to get this wrong and then have to go buy another stinking roll of plastic. So now that I got the plastic cut, I'm going to start draping it over the PVC pipe. And to help me do that, I'm going to just be using some of these little clips here. Now I'm going to use a furring strip to secure the plastic sheeting to the frame, and I already have this pre-drilled and everything, so I can go ahead and drive my screws without having to worry about splitting out this cheap, janky little furring strip. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to this other side here, and as I go through, I'm just going to try to pull on the plastic a little bit just to get a little bit tighter. I'm not really expecting a whole lot of snow here this year. I mentioned in a previous video that it's supposed to be pretty mild here, but if you're in an area where you do get a lot of snow, you definitely want to get this as tight as you can so that you don't have snow build up on the outside of it, not be able to shed off and then weigh the thing down and break it. So now I'm just going to gather up this end here. Now I'm going to lay across this furring strip so I can figure out exactly how long it needs to be. And now I'm just going to mark it with my pencil. This doesn't have to be super duper precise. I'm just going to kind of try to get it in the ballpark. Next up, I'm going to do the same thing to this furring strip that I did for the long sides. Just like those, I already have them pre-drilled, so all I got to do is drive the screws in. Then all I need to do is the exact same thing that I did over here on the other side. Just gather this up in the middle, figure out how long the furring strip needs to be, cut that, pre-drill, and then sink these down into the frame. So now I have all four sides of the plastic secured to the frame, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of plastic hanging over on the sides, and especially there on the end. I'll just use a utility knife to cut those off, and then we should be pretty close to getting done with this. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of adjustable arms to this so that on days like this where it's a little bit warmer, I can open the hoop house up and keep it that way so that the plants can get plenty of ventilation. Well, that's about all I got for y'all today, but if you want to see a few different ways to build a Faraday cage, then click here. Or if you want to see the best way to refill a 1-pound propane bottle, then click here. Also, if there's any other building projects that y'all would like for me to do on the channel, then go ahead and drop those down in the comments below. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.